Danna first to just talk a bit about what she's seen, reports from the field. She's done a lot more of that work than I have. And she might want to talk about tribal constitutions. As I say, Indians got those in 1934. Gloria might want to talk about some of her experience in being an interpreter. So please just listen for a few minutes. We have a lot more time for conversation than other panels, so we'll try to put it up to you guys. And if you want to run out and get this pamphlet, you can check how much you know about Indians. Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Cross. I had the pleasure of taking 5 courses from Professor Cross, and I have to say, maybe that's why I've had certain successes as an Indian lawyer. I think one of my favorite hats that I've worn, having graduated from the law school in 1996, was participating in the summer Indian education program as a professor. And I know that Dean Russell's here, and I congratulate the law school for continuing this. One of the classes I taught, and this is why I think I've been invited today, was Indian education law. And I have to tell you, when we got to the section about Article 10 of Montana's Constitution and how it became the impetus for Indian education for all the other students from the other states were very, very jealous of what Montana had to offer. And I know that some of the folks who were originally part of the convention in 1972 are here or will be here, and I have to congratulate you for the amazing language that does set Montana apart as being progressive in the context of how Indians are treated, and became the springboard for some wonderful initiatives that I have noticed in my short career has meant that we're getting somewhere. Progress is being made in the area of us being better people to each other within this state. Of course, we should just start, I think, by reading Article 10, Section 2, the section that I think is the most prevalent in the Montana Constitution related to Indians. There are other provisions that mention Indians, but Article 2, Section 1-2 says, the state recognizes the distinct and unique cultural heritage of the American Indians and is committed in its educational goals to the preservation of their cultural integrity. And that's pretty profound. And I know that Gloria can speak to her efforts in implementing Indian Education for All, which of course was passed by the legislature, MCA 21501. I have to speak in citation because Ray Cross does this in class all the time. He would actually speak in footnotes. It was pretty amazing. But that is the provision that was born out of this constitutional section that is being implemented by the Office of Public Instruction. They said, please take their material so they don't have to carry it back, and is being implemented by people like Gloria in the schools and in educating the public. It's not about educating Indians per se. That's usually, especially in the BIA system, the job of the federal government. This is talking about educating all in our public schools about these the incredible, significant cultural, historical, scientific accomplishments of Indians, and so that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I told Ray, I have an anecdotal story, don't we all love those, about how Indian Education for All is working. And it is anecdotal, but I do want to share it. The U.S. attorney who I work for, Mike Cotter, and I went to the Montana Law Enforcement Academy to teach a course on Indian jurisdiction. And it was a class of 38 cadets, and one was Native. But they thought that the Montana Law Enforcement Academy, much to their credit, thought that they should offer something similar to this topic. And so we went over in an evening, and it was elective. And I was expecting to have that one Native kid show up for the class, right? But I will tell you, 35 of the 38 cadets showed up, and they had engaging questions, and we talked about the controversies. We talked about it. These were mostly, I'm 40 now, kids from rural parts of Montana who, you know, they wanted to know more. And I was so encouraged because these are the, you know, the future law enforcement who, you know, we usually don't regard as being the most enlightened individuals. I have to tell you, now that I am law enforcement, I'm a little more sympathetic to their view, but we had just great questions about Indian status, who's an Indian, and I attribute it to the fact that this is a generation of cadets who had been educated under Indian Education for All, under the Montana legislative statute that was implemented. That's my little anecdotal story. And maybe it's because of people like Gloria who come in and do what they do in the schools and OPI, but that's my cute little story. It wasn't all that legal, but...
Well, I live in Anaconda now. I was born and raised in Great Falls, Montana. And I first kind of started thinking I should go into this school and teach my daughter's class. And we were in Stanford, Montana. Anybody know where that is? Okay. Little tiny farm and ranch town between Great Falls and Lewistown. And so I sat there and I thought, okay, well, I could start with stories and teaching them what I know and what I've learned. So I went into the classroom, and one of the first things that we did, we taught her kindergarten class was a winter count. I thought, oh, this will be a fun one. So we went through that and we made little bags and I told them stories and read them stories. Mrs. Holly Woodall, fantastic woman, took a great big paper and made a giant winter count and took it to their fair. And they won. And I thought, well, this is pretty exciting. Okay. Well, I have 3 daughters in the public school systems, and we moved over to Anaconda, and I thought, okay, I want to do this some more. This is fun. This is great. These kids are loving it. So I go into the elementary school system, and I say, can I come in and talk to the kids or read stories? And the principal goes, well, that would be wonderful. You know, just fill out these forms, turn them in. Okay, you can do that. Go into the library, and I bring everything that I have, things that my mother has made, beaded things, my buffalo skull. My husband likes to shoot a buffalo every year. Everything that I have that relates with Native culture, and bring it in and check out books, and I lay it all out for the kids to see. And everything that I bring is something that they can touch, that they can smell, that they can feel, that they can interact with. And I introduce myself, and I start with stories. And I start reading them little stories. Like for the little ones, my favorite one was How Chipmunk Got His Stripes. Cute one, the kids get into it. I use voices, yes I do. So we get into this, and I'm sitting here and I'm talking to the little kids, and I'm asking them, how many of you are Native American? And some are like, and I'm like, do you know what tribe you are? And we go into that, and I said, I know a story about yours. And we go through this, and their eyes light up, and they get excited, and they get proud, and they're like, wow, this is wonderful, this is my culture. Well, when I was in Great Falls growing up, we didn't have the Indian Education for All, per se, but there was a woman named Sandy Hoole, and she started Indian Club. Now, before that, I really didn't know anything about my culture, or anything at all, really, except that I knew that I was Indian. Well, with the Indian Club meeting every week, I got to learn more and more. And she planted that seed for me to explore my culture. And as time has gone on, and seeing all these kids and people that I've known for years, you know, we've all learned something. And through this, I've had amazing opportunities just in school with just fantastic people, including like a higher education program, and I got to go on a 3-day horseback wagon and trail trip over towards Arley. It's like, wow! But I've seen these kids, and one thing I learned is that if they can engage in it, if they can somehow touch, feel, smell, they take that with them, and it stays with them. And even with the non-Native American kids, you know, a lot of them, they just get so excited about it. They're like, hey, you're the lady that had the buffalo skull. Yep. That's me. You're the one who read me the story about Crow, Rainbow Crow. And I'm like, yes, that was me. Well, I also do living history in Nevada City, Montana. And I'm an interpreter. I've been a third-person interpreter going on 4 years, 4 summers, I should say. We do a lot of research in the off-season. And one thing that I always find so interesting is that people come from all over the world. You know, not just Montana. We get people from Turkey, China, Europe, I mean, all these amazing places. And I'm in the wood stove and I'm teaching people, basically, showing them how life was in the 1860s of the gold camps. I'm obviously Native American. I have my hair in braids and I'm wearing the clothing from that time frame. And little kids and adults are like, "Are you Indian?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Oh, where are you?" They start asking me other questions, and I've been able to use that to keep educating, not just here in our town and in our state, but people from all over the world want to know about our culture and about our state of Montana. And I just get really excited when I start talking about it and start talking to these kids and these people because they want to know more. They don't want to quit. They want to know more. And then they remember, that's the Indian lady. Thank you.
Let me just change the focus a bit, and maybe we'll come back to tribal constitutions. I want to just kind of give you a little short storyboard to think about this issue of natives and constitutions. Natives have had a very equivocal relationship with constitutions, especially in the four settler nations, the English settled nations, New Zealand, Canada, Australia, and the United States. And how these various nations dealt with, if you will, Native people is quite interesting. And also, there's no good resolution. There's never been any easy way to either bring in Indians into the constitutions, natives into the constitution, or to keep them out. Let me just mention how these different nations have tried to handle their native populations. First of all, and perhaps the most interesting, is Australia, because I took my family on sabbatical 10, 11 years ago. That was about the time of what's called the Stolen Generation, famous movie called Rabbit Proof Fence, which divided the law faculty at Griffith Law School. Some thought it was just a fabrication, grandstanding, riling up the natives again. And other ones thought it was absolutely true. And if you look at how Australia tried to deal with their native peoples known as the Aboriginals, not very satisfactory. 1967 is sort of a price for exiting the Commonwealth, getting a constitutional status as a real new nation. Australia had to figure out how to deal with Aboriginals. In their 1967 constitution, they decided to create, constitutionally speaking, a racial class exclusive to Aboriginals. So in 1967, Aboriginals became a protected racial class under Australian constitutional law, has had great benefit, and in some ways, basis for native land claims, basis for a sort of a sovereignty, at least separate status in the Northern Territories, which is largely Aboriginal. But the racial class idea hasn't been carried over. Certainly it was rejected in the United States. If you look at Canada, Canada once again was a prize for exiting the Commonwealth, becoming a real nation. 1982 had to pass a constitution that recognized, in a certain measure, rights of First Nations. And they did it fairly, I hate to say it, grudgingly. And they did it in sort of an unsatisfactory way. On the one hand, the Constitution, Article 31 of the 1982 Canadian Constitution, confirms a pre-existing treaty and Aboriginal rights of First Nations. At the same time, under what's called charter rights, very much like our Bill of Rights, it subordinates those rights to the charter rights.